Hey there, comic friends. We're back.
We're back. And we're starting with Baltimore, Infernal Train, issue 2 of 3. This is a tale of a vampire hunter in kind of a alternate world, 1916 thereabouts. Lord Baltimore, who's hunting down a vampire whose name I don't remember, who I guess killed his family. And in this issue he has a big encounter with a member of the Inquisition.
The new Inquisition.
The new Inquisition, who wants to torture him and kill him, etc.
Right.
And then vampires get involved too, and we get swept into the Infernal Train plot, back into the Infernal Train end of the plot at the end of this issue, which seems to be a train that fills up with the bodies of newly created vampires.
Right.
That's going to somehow give power to a group of elder vampires.
And they're willfully walking in.
Right, the new vampires willfully just walk into the flames, and so I don't know if it's powered by souls, because vampires don't have souls.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know enough maybe about the Baltimore universe. But their ultimate goal is to revive the eldest of the vampires, I believe,
Right.
who's kind of an ultimate evil monster.
And
the woman organizing all of this is still human,
right,
which is interesting.
But obviously, some sort of cultist in the whole
Right.
thing.
She mentions it being a matter of faith or religion or belief.
Right. She's crazy.
And have you read much other Baltimore before this?
I have read. We were just talking off camera. This is
Right.
series 17. I think I'm back. I think I started like around series 15. I mean, I can't tell you off the top of my head who it is that killed Baltimore's family.
Right.
To some degree it's inconsequential, because the story has always been
Right.
he's constantly chasing this guy and having to put down other evil along the way.
Right.
I've always really enjoyed. They're always really short. This is the longest of
3 issues is the longest one.
that I have ever read. Normally it's like 2. I know when it first started there was like a 5 or 6 issue was the first ones
Right.
back when it first started out.
So you're pretty much in the dark as much as I am reading
To a large
this.
degree, right.
And are you enjoying it as I am?
Yeah, I really like the character. I mean, it sounds simple, but there's something really cool about it. I don't know, this on a base level, to me, there's just something really cool about this, him, charging off into this other stuff, and they always have him encountering quirky things. In this one, of course, one of the other aspects of the story is who's really the evil person here. You've got this supposedly holier than thou Inquisition guy who is, I mean, did you read the last one? You didn't read the last one, did you? The last one.
Issue 1 of this is all I've.
But okay, so yeah, before this series there was another one. Before that, we got another heavy introduction into this guy. He's been around before, the Inquisition guy, and it's pretty clear that he's gone way off the deep end. Yeah, he's gone way off the reservation as far as who's godly and who isn't godly anymore.
But he believes his own.
Oh yeah,
thing. He's not.
He truly
just enjoying torturing people.
He truly is driven by what he thinks is the word of God,
Right.
to and how he views himself as purifying people, as basically torturing them to death, which is of course what he wants to do to Baltimore.
Right.
And he just knows Baltimore is the ultimate evil because he's been exposed to so much evil. He has to be evil.
You've been fighting evil, so we want to torture you to death to purify you.
He pretty well tortures and almost kills like one of Baltimore's friends in a prior one, trying to get out of him because he's encountered evil. He must be evil. The guy's a nice guy, but of course he encountered evil, so he must be evil. Almost tortures him completely to death because of his sins, and trying to find out where Baltimore is at.
Right.
And pretty much sets it up for Baltimore to encounter him, so hopefully Baltimore will get rid of him.
This, to me, it feels like, really excellent pulp fiction adventure done at a very high, nuanced level, despite the pulpiness of it. So, like you were saying about the character, somehow, even though he's kind of a stoic character, you get a feeling of layers to it.
Right.
And his world, the world that he inhabits.
Yeah.
This alternate vampire plagued world.
Yeah.
Feels very real.
Yeah.
But still with a fun, pulpy feel to it.
And even though you're jumped in 17 at something that's in the middle of something, it's not so out there that you just go, I can't deal with the fact I don't know what's going on. Because it's still simple enough that you can just get in on it.
Right, and it's done in a nice linear fashion so that I don't feel like I'm having things thrown at me.
Right. Right. I can't remember there ever any of the ones I've read. I can't remember there ever being a flashback that forces you to relive something that you're going, where does this come from, or those sorts of things. And yeah, I just really enjoy it.
The art helps too. I think the artist does a lot of subtleties with faces and things, along with just being beautiful art, beautiful coloring. Is this
Dave Stewart?
Colored by your favorite, your man, Dave Stewart?
Well, I don't know how many Eisners he has, but I think he's well deserved.
Dave Stewart pays him to say this all the time. No, but this is this is a perfect example of how good Dave Stewart is.
It's got action in it with them just blowing things up and whatnot. I mean, you have these things that happen that you're just really kind of curious as to, like the feeding the engine of the vampires.
Right.
What the heck?
That's a really cool, bizarre idea.
And they're loading this train up. They're just walking right into the front of the engine, and then it's going to take off down the road. And they're going to go someplace else, and you're just kind of going, what's going on. I love the art in it as far as like the Inquisitor. As they draw him, he just looks more and more manic as it goes along. He just looks more and more like he's losing it and whatnot. Yeah, I'm excited for the next issue. I think it stays really solid, and I'm really enjoying it. Just as a side note, in January, I guess January solicitations say that he actually finally catches up with whoever this villain, whoever the vampire is.
Oh.
So I don't know if that means there's an end,
The end.
or is he really caught up with him? I have no idea, but still.
It's funny, I'd rather keep reading from this point than go back.
Yeah.
Phil, at this point.
Well, for me, what I've been doing is if I happen to be hunting around online somewhere and I see some for a cheap sale or whatever, or if I happen to be the few times I'm ever in a comic book store and I find singles that I don't own, I pick them up just to read them because lots of times they are just little stories in them. I mean, there's this big plot of him chasing down this vampire, but each of these series is its own little story. I mean, one of the last ones that came out was literally a one-shot, and the one-shot actually had two different stories in it. One story was about a lady whose husband comes back from the war, but he comes back as a vampire and changes her, and she doesn't realize it. And Baltimore deals with her in a different way than he would normally deal with, a vampire by just, chopping their head off and shoving holy wafers in their mouth. And the other one had to do with this supposedly haunted tank that was left on the battlefield. And in the haunted tank, inside the tank is a vampire who's been hiding in there for years and only eats people that come by and get too close to the tank. But he never leaves the tank because under the tank is this completely other demonic force that spews out demons and attacks people if the vampire can't eat them fast enough. But the vampire is afraid to leave the tank because if he leaves the tank, he's going to get attacked by the demonic forces too. So it's really complicated, but kind of just a fun, bizarre little...
So lots of clever, just weird fantasy situations.
Right, and the only thing that ties them all together is it happens to be Baltimore is traveling across the country trying to get to this vampire that he wants to put down, and in the process he puts down other
like
people.
Kane in Kung Fu.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. Hey, next, talk about Lazarus, issue number 4, a near future dark.
Also pulpy.
Yeah.
Lots of violence.
Lots of violence. Well, our main character, she's an enforcer. I mean, they call him Lazarus, but she basically works for one of 30 rich families, of which we've only seen 2 families. But and in this issue in particular, she's finishing up having struck a deal with this other family for them not to go to war. She's having a moment with this other Lazarus from this other family, and her family, some of her quote-unquote siblings, which they aren't really siblings, because she's some genetically created thing, I guess, blow her up because they want to start a war or whatever. I'm not sure exactly on all. There's a lot of political machinations going on.
I think they want to undermine their father.
Right.
And by killing her at a moment where it will ruin the treaty that they're trying to make, start a war, which somehow will get the father in trouble, and then they'll take over. But then one of the 2 that are having machinations against the father is double-crossing the other and setting him up to take the fall. Right,
because it's gone bad. So it's gone bad. So she's figured out how to set her brother up to take the heat for the whole thing. Right. Which I'm not sure the father buys any of it. I think the father is pretty savvy, as in that he's suspicious of his kids too.
Right. At the moment, the father seems kind of the admirable one, even though he's on top of what is a hideous little empire. But he's the smart one who isn't fooled. And
well, I mean, in this book you've got the family, which number in the very few.
Right.
You've got the serfs, which are the people who are the skilled hired labor that you have helping you
Right.
out, and then you have the waste,
The
which
waste,
is
which
basically what we'd be.
The unemployed waste trying to find some food in the muck.
Yes. Yes, it's a horrible place. It's an absolutely horrible
Right.
place.
So it's kind of a semi-post-apocalypse. It's post-economic collapse. And presumably
Well, the government
millions of people are dead. From,
Right, but big corporations and family holdings have basically taken over for governments. Governments obviously collapsed and fell apart, and now it's literally families controlling zones of the world. Seemingly,
Yeah.
is the state that it's in. I don't know if it's apocalyptic because I think you're on the verge of potential apocalypse, but I've always envisioned apocalypse is after everything has actually been annihilated.
Right.
And these people haven't annihilated everything.
But it's Earth.
Oh, it's
humanity in desperate straits. I
It's
guess.
Blade Runner kind of a deal.
It seems beyond Blade Runner
Yeah,
to me.
even
But
worse.
we haven't got a real clear view of the
world.
waste.
Yeah.
But they give us population numbers.
Yeah, which are just terrific. Yeah.
So like LA has a few 100,000 people left in
Right.
it, I think. So that's why I think of it as semi-apocalyptic.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I find the book really interesting. This issue, maybe less so than some of the others have been for me. I mean, I'm liking where it's going. I'm interested in the world and the world building that's going on. The book itself as a whole brings up some curious questions for me. I mean, how do you deal in a world where most of us, if you're in like the corporate family world, the expectation is at some point dear old dad dies and you take over the business and then you have the control and the power and all that stuff. Well, in this near future world, science and medicine has gotten so good. Who knows when dad's going to die? So what do you do with yourself if you know you're never going to become better than what you are? You're always going to be the second son or the first daughter or whatever. You're never going to get your father's empire because he's never going to die. So is that why these kids are doing what they're doing? Is to get that kind of, I mean, otherwise, why would they be, they've got such sweet gigs, why would they be messing with dad otherwise?
Well, because power wants power.
Is that what it is?
I
Power
mean,
corrupts?
You just want more. I mean, they have to be very, I don't, as a realistic science fiction, I don't really buy into this as a workable future. But I find it a very enjoyable...
Because of the science? Because of
No,
science,
not the
you don't?
science,
Oh, okay.
because of the sociology of it.
Oh, okay.
So I think it would crumble very quickly because it's so top heavy.
Right. Right.
Even medieval feudal times,
The
you had
masses after
a
a while.
series, a pyramid, whereas here you have like a family of maybe 10 people at the top,
Right.
and then a small group of what you might call knights, I suppose, and then everybody else,
Right.
the paupers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, they haven't showed us how they control those masses, I guess. Knowing that would know whether or not that whole thing would function the way it does.
In terms of this issue, and you're sort of saying it's a little less exciting, I feel like this issue, all the stuff that was set up in the previous issues happens.
Yeah.
You could see that it was going to happen, and
Right.
in this issue it happens.
Right.
You know, from
was
the
no
very
surprise.
first issue, we've been hinted that she isn't really related to them.
Right.
And at the end of this issue, spoilers, she gets an email where someone tells him he's not
Yeah,
your
some
real
secret.
father.
That.
But we've known that since issue 1.
Right. So that's not like a surprise for us.
So, we were waiting for her to find out, because obviously that's going to be a turning point for her when she realizes she's not what she thought
Right.
she was.
How is she gonna function now with the family not being the family, or what is that? I mean, that's what this is really beyond the world building and what it
Right.
is. That's, I'm assuming, what the story is about. Is
Right.
her journey through discovery of.
Right, it's the super soldier who discovers he or she is not what
They've been built as.
what they rebuilt her as, like
Right.
with RoboCop or something.
Right. Right.
To really simplify it.
It's better than that, though.
It's very good. It's very well
Yes.
done. I don't buy into it as serious science fiction on the social economic level, but I enjoy it as really well done pulp. It's very cinematic, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Up until this cover, all the covers to me look like movie posters.
Yeah, that's true. Those were very good. This cover's less
It's
exciting.
Yeah. I don't think it's very good at all, actually. But.
And it implies they fight, which they don't. These two characters.
I guess. I don't know. It looks like she's caressing
Or they're
him
about
there,
to kiss,
so.
I guess.
Yeah. think it's interesting that he looks more like a Terminator, and she's all
Right.
enhanced biology, where he is machine.
Well, they sort of imply it's because he's an older
Old.
Lazarus
Yeah.
and has had more of his body destroyed and then replaced. But I'm not sure. It could be
or
they were created in
better
different ways.
better technology.
Better technology for
based
her.
on. I mean, because for her, as they're blowing her up and killing her, the scientists
Her
are back.
body's putting
The
herself back
scientists are back
together,
there
right.
watching her, put herself back
forgot
together
about
again, and they're even amazed at the level that she's putting herself back together. And they're the people who basically put her together in the first
Right.
place. So, interesting book.
Yeah. Oh, Letter 44, another science fiction book.
Issue one,
Issue number 1,
a whole $1.
and it was only $1, but it will cost you $4 from here on out, right? That's the Oni standard price.
What is it? It's either $3.99 or $3.50. Yeah, one of the two. Yeah.
I think it's $3.99, but we'll see. And it's by Charles Soule, who is writing lots of books, including Swamp Thing and Superman, Wonder Woman, and
Some Marvel
Thunderbolts,
books,
and will be writing She-Hulk.
Yeah.
So, and the basic plot is a new president who's kind of like President Obama comes into office and gets a letter from the old president who's kind of like Bush Jr.
George W. Yeah.
And in the letter learns that the reason for all of his wacky foreign policy and other policies that the Obama character thought were so bad was because of this alien craft or machine that's somewhere out, I guess, in the asteroid belt,
Yeah.
and threatening Earth in some vague, unknown way.
Well,
And
threaten
so-
if no other sense that it's out there, it's mining, and potentially is building a
And
weapon.
it's destroyed any unmanned probes. That have come out.
and they have no idea what it is. So obviously, us as Earthlings, it's a threat because we don't know what it is.
So the Bush-like character has been creating little bits of war all over the country to strengthen our armed forces, which I had trouble buying into. But anyway, it's kind of a clever conceit. And then the other half of the story takes place on the human-driven spaceship that's just about to go beyond the shield that's blocking the view
Yeah,
of
this
this
veil,
alien
yeah.
artifact. Begs the question of how we know there's an alien artifact behind this veil.
Because they can see it, but they can't actually monitor what's there. They can sense that there's something there. They say that at the beginning is that they can with their.
But then how do they have any clue that it could be a natural phenomenon or something? They have no clue that it's really an alien incursion.
Good point.
So, because I've read a lot of hard science fiction, I start thinking about these things. I thought it was a very interesting, pretty well written book with marginal art for me. And as you can see, I can start picking away at the science fiction.
Oh, sure.
And there was some other stuff that I picked at when I was reading it. But sorry, what did you think? I think I was supposed to let you go first.
No, you're fine. I like the fact that I thought it was a good first issue to set up what the comic is going to be about. Gives us the position, gives us the whole idea. You get this new president now. I figure you got two stories going. How's the president down on Earth deal with? Okay, do we tell the public? How do we support all this? And then you've got these 8 or 9 people that are going to be a whole other story. They've already been in space for what, 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah.
On
And
their
they
way to
have
Mars,
a lot of
basically.
very interesting relationships.
The equivalent, obviously, they've been out for a long time. Lo and behold, one of the characters is pregnant, and she must be
That was a
very
nice
pregnant.
twist.
I mean, she,
Yes,
as
very pregnant.
as the comic book girl said on the Hangout, she looks like she's about ready to pop.
She does.
And they're concerned. At least 2 of the people keep saying, you get back in the shield, because I'm assuming the radiation
Right.
that obviously goes through spaceships. There must be some place in the spaceship that's
Right.
more protected. So there's a whole story in of
Did
itself.
this spaceship have gravity or not?
There's a
In
whole-
some pictures it does and some
Right.
it doesn't.
Well, so there's a whole story in and of itself. What is it like to give birth in outer space, and
Right.
what is it like if a fetus has spent the entire time in space and whatnot? I do know you're going to pick on the science, but I do know that Charles Soule did things like he contacted NASA and space people and said, okay, if right now we absolutely had to build a spaceship to make it to here, what would it be like? And he took the information that they gave him, and that's what they're writing off of as far as that goes. So he believes anyway that the book is relatively close as far as that part goes. How they're traveling there is pretty hard science is
Right.
what he's going with. Granted, you got this whole veil thing. You're right. That's a good question I didn't think of. How did they know it was there if now
Right.
when they send a probe through it goes and gets hammered?
Right. I mean, when astronomers find a blank area in space,
Right.
they don't assume it's aliens. It's usually
Well,
some
I would
kind of
assume most don't.
physics anomaly, maybe black hole, maybe
Right.
it's this or that.
Right.
But to assume that it's aliens that are building something out there when you, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
if
thought-
you read it even more
yeah.
closely, Soul deals
Right.
with it a
I
little
thought the
better.
art was fine. It's serviceable to tell us a story. I mean, that's nothing, it doesn't knock us out, but some characters I think look better than other characters as far as that goes. But I think it sets up some really interesting stories that I'm interested in hearing about. Like I said, you got this half that's up in space. What are they going to encounter? We do get a picture of this crazy device that's up there at the very last page. Yeah, I'm
Well,
curious.
I felt the artist. So it's
Record.
saving power
It
because
saves
we're not
power because
recording.
it's not recording. It's just sitting there.
Back to letter 44.
Oh God. Okay, we're ready. We're gonna get this over with. We're gonna be hoarse and it's gonna be nighttime. Okay, action. This is take 3, I think, of letter 44, which we're just gonna end by saying, I don't know what at this point. I'm liking. I'm curious about the stuff that's gonna happen. And
I'm liking it, but I'm going to pick away at the science fiction.
there we go. Now on to Shaolin Cowboy, which we already
Right.
talked about halfway
Which,
through.
shall I? You did a lot of talking. Shall I attempt?
Sure. I don't know
So,
because I don't know what to say about it.
Poor Travis picked this up because it was one of my picks, and I was real excited because Jeff Darrow is a very memorable artist with obsessive detail and kind of a bizarre, twisted way of drawing everything. Most people right now might know him for covers of Deadpool, the first 5 Deadpool Now.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Marvel Now
Okay,
covers
that-
he did.
Sure.
And he was kind of famous or infamous for doing these books with Frank Miller, Rusty and the Big Robot. I forget what it's called. But more memorably, Hard Boiled. And you mentioned when our battery wasn't working, Tarantino.
Yeah.
And that book with Frank Miller had a Tarantino kind of feel
Oh,
too.
okay.
And this has kind of the Tarantino feel, as you were mentioning, with, this is this supposed cowboy, kung fu cowboy
Right.
who uses 2 giant bamboo poles tied together with
Chainsaws.
tied on the ends, and fights hordes of zombies.
Which we don't know why.
We don't know why. And he seems to climb up out of the earth.
He climbs up out of the earth, and then the zombies
The
start
zombies
pouring
climb
out of the
up out of
earth,
the
and he's
earth,
just
too.
hacking them down.
Yeah, and if there's this jokey "what happened before" tiny text here, if you do read the last paragraph of it,
Oh,
which
it does
I did,
tell ya?
it says he's been underground for 6 years,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and all this other bizarre stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
So all of this is like a slow take joke,
Yeah.
but drawn in this obsessively detailed style.
Down to the tattoos on the zombies.
Right.
I mean, it's
and
just
every
crazy.
zombie has withered genitals
Right.
drawn with loving care.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Visually, I love the book. There's nothing to it
Right.
written wise really,
It's
other
kind
than
of like
it's just a visual.
an artist just having fun
Sure.
and pretending to have a story to go with it.
It feels like an indie book. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I don't say indie as in a creator-owned book. I mean, it feels
Right.
indie like as in an underground.
Underground,
It feels
right.
Corbin-esque. It feels
Right.
that sort of heavy
An
metal.
artist just doing what he has to do
Right.
without caring about whether people like it or not, or whether it makes sense.
Right. It's fun, but it's very 8th grade humor kind of fun. I mean,
True. You snicker at it.
Right. Right.
You
'Cause it's
giggle
just-
at the
'cause
withered
it's just-
zombie parts
'cause it's
and
just
the
ridiculous.
and the chainsaws whipping through.
It's just ridiculous. How many issues is it? 2 or 3?
I don't know, but
I'm gonna
it is
pick
not going on for long.
I'm gonna pick it up.
It's kind of like a novelty thing,
Right.
More than a reading experience,
Right.
It's like if you're into comic book art, it's an interesting, weird novelty just to see what he'll do next.
Well, I mean, the cover alone just tells you a lot about how
Right.
ridiculous the book is going to be. I mean, there's a little chihuahua walking off with a severed hand. There's somebody sitting on the toilet, but I'm assuming that's their severed head laying on the
Right.
ground.
And probably their severed hand too.
Yeah, and he's there with a pistol and a chainsaw, and he's a florist. The back, a picture on the
In
very
the
back,
back
of
it
it.
says, photo taken 3 weeks before Shaolin Cowboy was fired, despite the very same day winning the coveted Flower Arranger of the Year award.
I mean, so it's yeah. So I mean, they're having. I mean, it's just Where he starts hacking on people is pretty
Right.
outstanding, where he's just cutting limbs off left and right.
And almost
And that
from the
toad.
very beginning, he's showing you that he's just playing a goof on you.
Yeah.
I mean, a full page spread just to show a toad
At the
sitting
very,
on top
very
of a
bottom.
rock, at the
Yeah.
very bottom. And it says 6 years later.
Yeah.
6 years later to whatever supposedly happened in the previous series.
Which I guess there was. I didn't realize there was a previous
was.
series until I was watching La Rosa's video, and
Right,
she
La Rosa's collecting it.
and she had like a trade or something like that, and I was like, what, really?
It's kind of a mythical comic because I've never seen it for sale before.
Yeah.
But I've heard about it. I should have hunted it down more. And most recently, they released a pretend pulp magazine of Shaolin cowboy stories,
Oh, okay.
which I got out of the library and then didn't read because it looked pointless
Well,
without the art.
oh yeah, good point. Good point. So, I mean, I thought it was amusing, but unless you're, I don't know, into that art
Right.
style and that, I don't know how I'd recommend this book to anybody.
I wonder if Terrence Comic Book Crack would
He'd
like
probably
this,
get a
if
kick out
this
of it.
is up his alley.
Maybe also Sparrow might like it.
Spiro Ducky might
Might like it too,
it.
other than the price tag,
Yeah.
because it's a $4 book.
It does have a lot of pages.
Yeah. Oh, it's got a lot of cool art. I mean, if you're into, it's cool
It's
looking art.
probably
don't get me wrong.
28 pages of art. It's not
Yeah.
like a Marvel book with just
Yeah,
20
it's-
pages of art
it's-
for $4.
I mean, it's
But there's not much
it's
story.
cool art, but it's not deep by
Right.
any means. There's no thought. For me anyway, there was nothing about it that was thought provoking to make me go, huh.
Right. And
More zombies, more
next
chainsaws.
issue, more zombies, more chainsaws. So you can guess the plot.
There you go. Yeah.
Were you as happy with Dave Stewart's coloring as you always
Yes.
are? Okay.
Yes. It looks like a Dave Stewart colored comic book.
It's very brown.
Yes. That it is.
I guess it has to be. It's
It
all in
is,
the
but there's
desert.
lots of varying degrees of brown.
Lots of varying degrees of brown. Dave Stewart worked hard.
Unless,
on
of course,
brown
you're
palettes.
brown colorblind, then it just looks like one giant blob of shriveled testicles and breasts and whatnot. Yes.
It'll be hard to see those shriveled testicles without them.
Oh, wow. Okay, last comic we're talking about. What is that? 3, right?
3. This I bought because Travis was buying it.
Yeah.
I was mildly curious, but it's a mini series, and it probably would have been one that I waited for trade on. And also,
Historically based.
right, I also wasn't super excited about the idea of a book that maybe is an answer to Frank Miller's 300.
Right.
Because that just doesn't float my
Because-
boat.
because that is
A
kind of
comic
their-
book that answers another comic book's
Right.
historical inaccuracies.
Right.
It's probably a lot more than that, but that's sort of its starting point. And it very graphically illustrates how horrible the lives of slaves and sub-slaves.
Right.
The heroes of this are slaves that are like community property of the whole state, so are
Yeah.
even lower than privately owned slaves. Kind of like, federal employees or something.
There you go.
But with less benefits.
Less benefits. No benefits. Yes.
And it builds to a really brutal, horrifying
Oh,
ending.
yes.
And the events leading up to it are pretty horrible too.
Yeah.
So I'm quite convinced just by this one issue that slavery in Sparta really, really sucked, and the Spartans were awful,
Yeah.
an awful society.
Well, yeah, because part of their thing is coming of age was going out and killing some of these people
Right.
as a Spartan.
People
that
who
was-
are already your slaves.